The laughter didn't just break the silence. It shattered my son's spirit right in the middle of his 12th birthday dinner. As my brother-in-law Victor sneered at Daniel's red sneakers, calling him a fashion disaster with no future, I felt a cold, familiar rage coil in my chest. Victor didn't even lower his voice. He swirled his expensive Bordeaux, the gold light of the restaurant catching the predatory glint in his eyes. He thought he was just bullying a child to feel tall. He didn't know I had a digital recording in my purse. A recording that would strip him of his reputation, his career, and his seat at the family table before the dessert menus even arrived. By the time I stood up, the room had gone ice cold and Victor was about to find out that the quiet mother he'd spent a decade mocking was actually the woman who held his entire life in the palm of her hand. My name is Ariana Whitmore. I am 36 years old, and if life has taught me anything, it's that people mistake silence for weakness. They see a mother adjusting her son's tie and assume she has no teeth. They see a woman who married into a legacy family and assume she's just another piece of the furniture. Tonight was supposed to be Daniel's night. My son is a soul made of bright colors and quiet observations. He loves art, he meticulously researches 19th century architecture, and he has a sense of style that refuses to be dampened by the beige world of his grandparents. For his 12th birthday he picked a navy blazer and bright red sneakers. He looked like a masterpiece. He looked confident. Until Victor opened his mouth. It's ridiculous. How could he wear something like that? He never had any taste, Victor said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the linen-covered table. Victor was the golden son. Polished, arrogant, and sharp-tongued. My husband, Ethan, was his polar opposite. Dependable, quiet, and tragically allergic to conflict. For 12 years I had watched Victor target my son. At 5 it was the way Daniel held a baseball bat. At 8 it was his soft interests. Boys should be boys, Victor would say, and my in-laws would chuckle nervously, as if shrinking a child was a cherished family tradition. I had warned Ethan months ago. Your brother doesn't tease Ethan. He hunts. And if you don't stop him I will. Ethan would just sigh looking at his feet. That's just how he is, Ari. Don't make a scene. But just how he is had built a cage around my son. I saw Daniel's shoulders fold inward. I saw the light go out of his eyes as his cousin laughed along with Victor. A mother doesn't just see her child. She feels the atmospheric pressure of their pain. Something old and primal woke up inside me. I wasn't just Daniel's mother tonight. I was the CEO of Whitmore Holdings. A company I had built from the dirt after my first divorce. A company that Victor desperately wanted a piece of. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw wine. I simply stood up, the silk of my dress whispering against the chair. Could everyone please be quiet for a moment? The room went still. Not a comfortable still, a pressurized, seconds before crash still. My mother-in-law, Evelyn, froze with a fork halfway to her mouth. My father-in-law, Arthur, a man who valued decorum above all else, looked pained. Victor just leaned back, a smug, amused smirk playing on his lips. Oh, Ariana has a speech, Victor mocked. Is it about the importance of self-expression and overpriced sneakers? I placed a hand gently on Daniel's shoulder. I could feel him trembling. I looked Victor dead in the eye, my expression a mask of absolute terrifying calm. Since you're so passionate about taste and legacy, Victor, maybe you'd like to explain something to the family, I said softly. He chuckled, glancing at his parents for support. Explain what, Ari? My superior eye for aesthetics. No, I replied, tilting my head. The charity gala last spring. The one where you introduced yourself to the Henderson Group as the regional director of Whitmore Holdings. The smirk didn't just fade, it evaporated. The air in the private dining room suddenly felt very thin. Ethan looked up from his plate, his brow furrowed in confusion. What are you talking about, Ariana? Arthur asked, his voice stern. I'm talking about Victor using my company's name, my legal registration, and my reputation to close a private investment deal for his own shell company, I said, my voice cutting through the room like a surgical blade. Without authorization. Which in the legal world, Victor, we call fraud. You're being dramatic, Victor hissed, his face turning a blotchy, panicked red. It was a misunderstanding. A networking slip of the tongue. I reached into my purse. I didn't rush. I wanted them to feel every second of the countdown. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. I thought so too, I said. Until 3 investors emailed my office asking why you were negotiating equity under my company's tax ID. So, I requested the hotel's security footage and audio from the gala networking floor. It's amazing what people say when they think they're the smartest person in the room. I pressed play. The recording was crystal clear. Victor's voice filled the restaurant, arrogant and booming. As regional director of Whitmore Holdings, I can personally guarantee you exclusive access to the Whitmore Tech Expansion Fund. We're keeping it in the family, but for a buy-in of $2 million I can bypass the board. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel was looking at me now, his eyes wide, realizing that the quiet mom was currently dismantling the family giant. Victor stood up so fast his chair scraped violently against the floor. You recorded me? You're trying to humiliate me over a joke about clothes. No, Victor, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I'm correcting a pattern. You think you can bully my son because he's soft? You think you can use my hard work to line your pockets because you're a Caldwell? You miscalculated. You aren't the hunter tonight. You're the collateral. The restaurant manager approached, sensing the escalating tension. Victor, realizing his golden son image was disintegrating in a room full of New York's elite, made his fatal mistake. He leaned over the table, his face inches from mine. It was just leverage, he shouted. They would have invested anyway. You're destroying a family over some sneakers. Nearby tables turned. Phones were lifted. The decorum Arthur loved so much was being incinerated in real time. Leverage is what you use when you have something of your own, Victor, I said, standing my ground. What you did is a felony. And while you were busy laughing at a 12-year-old's shoes, I was busy filing an internal audit. I didn't wait for the dessert. I didn't wait for the check. I took Daniel's hand, nodded to my stunned in-laws and walked out. Ethan followed us, looking like a man who had just seen his entire worldview shattered. But the revenge wasn't finished. Revenge isn't a moment, it's a process. At 8 a.m. the next morning, my legal team sent formal notices to every investor Victor had contacted. By 8:30 a.m., we had attached the audio proof of his misrepresentation. By 9 a.m. Victor's phone began to hemorrhage calls. He showed up at my office at 1:17 p.m. He looked like he hadn't slept. His suit was wrinkled, his tasteful tie was crooked, and the smirk was replaced by a desperate, jagged fear. You're destroying me, he choked out, standing in front of my desk. 3 investors pulled out this morning. My father is talking about removing me from the advisory board. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, Ariana. Please. I leaned back in my chair, folding my hands. You could have handled this privately, Victor. If you had been a decent human being, I might have handled the misunderstanding with a quiet reprimand. But you chose to humiliate my son in a room full of people. So I chose to return the favor. This is about pride, he yelled. No, I said, my voice like steel. This is about precedent. Because if I let you bully Daniel, he learns that cruelty wins. If I let you steal from my company, he learns that integrity is optional. I am teaching him a different lesson today. Don't start a war with someone who has more to lose than you do. Victor looked at Ethan, who was standing by the door. Are you really going to let her do this to your brother? Ethan, for the first time in 12 years, didn't look at his shoes. He looked at Victor with a strange kind of pity. I'm choosing my son, Victor. You should have thought about that before you laughed. The fallout was surgical. Victor wasn't arrested, I didn't need the paperwork. But in our world, a lack of credibility is a death sentence. The board invitations stopped. The golden son was quietly moved to the basement of the family's social hierarchy. But the real victory happened a year later, on Daniel's 13th birthday. It was a small dinner. Just the 3 of us. No in-laws, no Victor, no high society expectations. Daniel walked into the room wearing those same bright red sneakers, looking taller, more upright, and unapologetically himself. Do you think Uncle Victor still hates these? He asked, a small knowing smile on his face. I smiled back, squeezing his hand. Maybe. But his opinion is a bad investment, Daniel. And we don't put our stock in things that have no value. Ethan handed me an envelope. Inside were the signed papers legally declining the family trust voting structure that had previously favored Victor. It was the final nail. I should have done this years ago, Ethan whispered. I looked at my son, who was laughing, not the cruel, hollow laugh of his uncle, but the genuine bright sound of a boy who knew he was protected. I realized then that I didn't need to stand up again. The room had already learned its lesson. Sometimes the best way to handle a bully isn't to shout. It's to wait for them to walk into the trap they built for themselves and then simply turn on the lights.